It's another beautiful spring day in the Willmar and Kandiyohi County area. As you can see behind me, I've got a pond that's opening up. The ice has disappeared and we're actually starting to see a lot of geese on the ponds now and even some ducks flying around overhead. This month we're actually talking about just that. We're going to be talking about ducks, duck habitat, duck nesting, and even duck decoys. It's a beautiful March day out here at Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center. Today is Habitat Day. The Prairie Pothole Chapter of the Minnesota Waterfowl Association is having a conservation day. We're going to be making wood duck boxes, and we're going to be talking to the wood duck doctor himself, Dr. Roger Strand. Let's go check it out.
All right, you ready? Okay, good. Whoa! Nice job.
Our chapter is a chapter of the Minnesota Waterfowl Association. Our fundraiser is Prairie Pothole Day, and you're familiar with that one. And it's the first Saturday after Labor Day, and it's a fundraiser. We're all volunteers. My wife and I live on the farm and the farmhouse there where it's held. And the fundraiser part is selling lunch, and then also raffle tickets, and there can be as many as 4,000 people. We don't charge admission, but somehow, if the weather's good, we make the funds, and we use part of those funds for this event, which subsidizes heavily the box build. For instance, we buy the kit for the same amount that people here would pay, I think 20 bucks or whatever it is, I don't know. Anyway, they get the box, they build the box, they get a pole, they get a cone guard, and we try to teach them something in here about putting it up. And we choose to charge something because it puts a value on it. And so that the odds, I think, then are better that it's going to be actually put up and used, which is the whole idea.
With a big old gas truck.
What do you think, Gage? Is that pretty straight?
Yep. The entire one. Did you see it?
I want to try.
You want to try?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. It's gonna be a go-go.
I can't wait till you're in your 20s. It's gonna be great.
Now we need to put them up here.
The thing about this, and obviously this is a nice carving done by a man named Tom Kerr, who's a biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Service, but I still am asked, is that real? And of course it's not really a hen. She doesn't have any back half. You know, but that's what they do when they look out and they're looking to see what's going on in the world, and before they go out on break during incubation, they'll look and see that the coast is clear and then take off out of there. But this is just a postcard and a lucky shot in a box that's right near my house, and there's a wood duckling up at the hole and one at midair, and then the hen down below, and she's calling them out on jump day. And those ducklings are just 1 day old when they jump out. They haven't been fed by her, so she's anxious to get them down there. And we use a side opening door, which combines a lot of things for us, because you notice that we can walk up to this now and monitor the box, and we can involve the kids in not only building the box, like today out in the other room they can help to put it together, but there's no ladder involved. There doesn't have to be any ladder involved in this hobby, and especially not any trees, because it's so hard to make a tree mounted box predator proof. but with a good predator guard like this one, this is the best one I've found. And it's really true. And I tell people to look me right in the eyes when I say this, but I've been using this for, I think now 38 years. And the mammalian predation rate in my boxes that are mounted this way is 0, truly. I mean, squirrels, mink, coon, they cannot climb up with this thing in place. You have to keep it up at least 3 feet, maybe a few inches more off the ground, so that a squirrel or mink or coon cannot jump it. And that's the key thing. And once they would climb up this post, whether it be a metal discarded highway pole or whether it's a 4x4 wood pole like this, if they try to reach around and get above it, they just can't do it. And of course, out where they have in Maryland, where they have snakes that get into the box and eat the eggs, they need to have it tight to the pole so there's no gap there between the cone and the pole. And then this way we can line up with a step stool, so even kindergartners can be nose to nose with the eggs, and we tell them that yes, you can handle the eggs, and that's been shown to be true. But I say, just be careful now, there's a live wood duck inside there, and they're very careful and put it down, and we know that those eggs hatch, even though that's the case. And then there's a ladder in here. It can be made with either a router like this one is, or you can put a hardware cloth mesh metal ladder for them to climb up to the hole. Now here's a hen that just came back from break on jump day, and her ducklings, before she left, she gave them a chattering message: you be quiet, don't try to jump, don't try to climb, I'll be right back. And she's been talking to them inside the egg for oftentimes even a week before the hatch, and especially the last 3 days. She's been hammering at them. And don't know if this shows up, it probably does in the audio. But this is a big time day for her, and they are getting ready to go, and in the background you can hear thunder. And this is appropriate to listen to because she is not going to bring them out in the rain. And so in this particular case, this box was right on my barn wall where we live, and people that come to Prairie Pothole, they had seen that box right up on the barn wall. And so I'm up in the barn loft recording it, and I had to wait till 1:30 in the afternoon to see the jump, and I'd been there since not long, right before dawn, to catch the rest of the story. So you have to use patience then, and we had to wait for the rain to stop, because she knows by instinct that's not good for her young one-day-old ducklings. So that's when she brought them out. Now she's getting more and more excitable in her tone, and they can often understand what the hen is saying, whereas we are not sure what the heck she's saying. So, but listen to her, and right now she's poking her head out of the hole, and you can see her wing primary feathers crossed here, and so the only part of her that's in the box is just her hind end. And the back of her, the ducklings are starting to get pretty worked up and anxious about this. And I ask the kids when they're here for class, what do you think she's looking for? And most of the time they come out predators, and they're right. And so for one thing, in this case, they have to check to see if my old dog Yoda is in his kennel, because it's only 20 yards from the box. And she's been seeing Yoda all through her incubation. Anyway, she's looking for feral cats or mink or coon or whatever. See this one climbing up? Sometimes the duckling will climb up all the way to the hole and jump out. And there the duckling has actually initiated the jump, and she wasn't ready for it. And I've seen on camera, and now she flew down. She is on the ground, and she's giving them a message. And now Bedlam is in the box. Now they all want to be the first one to get out. And in a regular situation that's not the barn, here's a box where she's on the ground down here. And then you can see there's one in midair, and one at the hole, or you cannot see it, but anyway, the photo shows that. And this is a box of what we call best practices method of mounting in action. So that's what's going on there. And inside the box here, it's the same bedlam that's carried out here on the TV monitor. Some of them are better jumpers than others, and we'll see that here in a second. Most of them are finding the ladder, which is along here in the bottom part of the screen. And when they hit the ground, they're going to just hang around, right around the hen. They're going to wait for the hen to be patient enough to have at least the ones that can jump to go with her to the wetland. And while she technically and physically could do it, she could go in and get these last 3 out with her bill, carry them and put them on the ground or dump them out to get the other one, but she doesn't do it. And early on, even John James Audubon reported that the hen does that. But I don't believe he ever saw it because I'm still looking, and so is everybody else. And they don't do that. They have to be strong enough to get out by themselves, and that goes along with the fact that they're going to be strong enough to survive in the wild. And here are the last couple. I tell the kids that when there were only 3 left in there that it's Curly, Larry, and Moe, and I'm amazed that they still watch the Three Stooges like I did when I was a kid in the theater.
Don't look cold, anybody. No, it's not cold out here. Sun's shining, it's beautiful.
We found a crayfish.
It won't walk not any farther.
Troy will get a good shot of this, and then let's just dump it in here. Find some of these and put them right out there. Attaboy. There's one that wasn't good enough to hatch, isn't it? You can find some more.
Cool. Oh, sorry.
There you go. Put it right on there, man. All right. And then Jaden will get and block the wind a little bit here.
Here, look, I found one.
There you go. Put it right down on here.
Oh, I found some, I found 2.
That's it. Good deal.
You found more than 3.
Then we'll line them up here, and then we can tell how many ducklings
Hey,
jumped
can you
out
put
of there.
feathers on there? There's one. There's one. This looks
What kind of
new.
egg is that?
Here's
Is it a
one.
Magansер-
A mallard.
A mallard or a wood duck?
Mallard.
I mean a wood duck or a Magansер?
Mallard.
Magansер.
Wood duck. I mean, Magansер, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maganser.
Wood ducks are smaller and
Brown.
brown.
Okay, there's a classic. And woodpeckers, they'll come in a nest either when the hen is gone, that's when they come, and she'll poke a hole. He or she will poke a hole right in the center, about the size of a pencil, and then they put their tongue down in there and eat breakfast, man. They like scrambled eggs for breakfast, and they're not trying to destroy the nest, they're just trying to eat. And then when they have the fill, they leave whole meat. Hey, miss.
There's a bunch of them there. There's a cat. There's another cat.
Tim, you're not recording caps.
A ton of them?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Hello, my name is Carter Stenberg. I collect sporting collectibles such as hunting, fishing, decoys, fishing lures, anything that is old and you could use for sporting activity. Back in about 1985, I'm a cross-country skier, and we go to a resort called Maple Log, which is north of Detroit Lakes, and they became friends, and I stopped to visit with them one summer and saw flashes coming from their house and walked in, and they were taking pictures of Jim Richards was his name, his fish decoy collection. And immediately it was like, wow, these are wonderful. This is astounding. These are from Minnesota? And yes, they were. And then I learned that they were the makers in the Willmar area and started collecting them. I would go to auctions. I eventually started going to some of the sporting collectible shows. Finding people, I'd like to go to auctions so I could buy a old coffee can full of them for $10, $20 at that time. Eventually I went to Sauk Center and bought a John Tax fish decoy for more money than I ever thought I would ever spend on a fish decoy, and that kind of switched me over to starting to collect John Tax. Of course, he made ducks and he made all kinds of things, so once I started collecting those, then I kind of morphed into more ducks, and predominantly I'm collecting duck decoys, fish decoys, fishing lures not so much anymore, but still basically any type of sporting collectibles. That's how I started, and with anything your interests vary as you go along. You get excited about something, and then something new comes along and you switch over to that. I've had a few switches, but Minnesota fish, Evans, some Masons still. Masons were the first real decoy I collected. And of course the John Tax is still probably the most popular thing in my mind anyway. There is a book on Minnesota decoys out. It's fairly thick. This came out about, I'm going to estimate 5 years ago, but it's very detailed. If anybody has interest in finding out about decoys from throughout the state of Minnesota, if you can't find it in here, it'll be hard to not find, I guess. There was a carver from Ashby whose name was Ole Gunderson. And at the end of this book being written, they discovered probably 50 Ole Gunderson decoys in a shed by Ashby. And this is one of the birds that I ended up with the only Ole that I have, but it is a redhead, and it was done in the, I would estimate the 20s or the 30s. Hunted over, of course, but unique design, unique shape. Every carver had their own style. So this is one of my favorite birds. And if I could find more Ole Gunderson, I would probably add them, but there aren't very many to be found. The John Tax carver really drew me to him. I went to Osakis and stopped at a gas station and asked if they had any knowledge of John Tax. He said, "Oh yeah, I live down the street. Oh, I know the guy that hunted deer with him. He's my neighbor." So I knocked on the door of this 80-something-year-old man's house, and this tiny guy came out and we visited, and he invited me in, and 2 hours later I left and we became friends, and he told me stories of deer hunting with John Tax and really got my interest up. So then I started driving to Osakis on a regular basis, interviewing people, and eventually wrote an article that appeared in a magazine, one of the Decoy magazines. Another writer co-wrote it with me, so that was one of the first articles, and there have been different books and publications that have come out, and I know the tax story fairly well, so I've found a few pieces, and the biggest thing is I've met so many nice, interesting people throughout collecting. The man that I mentioned that had this John Tax, he had the birdhouse, the trout birdhouse that was in my living room. He had that in his basement for 40, 50 years. Never had put it out. And I said, "Oh, I really like to have that." And he said, "Well, not today. You will have to come back again." So I stopped at his place about once a month. And we'd have coffee and talk, and one day he finally said, "I'm going to sell you that piece now." So, but I kept going back to him. He was such a nice guy, and we were friends for about 10 years until he passed away. So I didn't really plan to collect a lot of things. It just kind of mushroomed, I guess, from where I started, and back there was a lot of times where you'd see different auctions advertised. So I started going to auctions and not knowing what I was going to find. When the internet came in and eBay came in, that changed a lot of the collecting. Many of the farm auctions were sold, or people put them on eBay instead of having hay racks and that. And after a while, that gets to be a long day when you wait for an auctioneer to sell what you're looking for. So it's changed over the years, but I didn't think I would have what I have. I guess if you look on the top, there are fish or ducks that are made from the Mason factory. There are some modern birds from Minnesota and Wisconsin, more Mason, some Heron Lake. Heron Lake was a very, very productive waterfowl area in the late 1800s, early 1900s. These are a different form of Mason. They're the oversized Mason, and they're in around the corner too. Some of those were used in one of Ron Van Gilder's prints. These were from up north, and they're called cabin camp decoys. Just kind of commissioned and made that way. These, we're not sure who made them, but we heard the stories of a priest in the St. Cloud area had been given a bag of them. So I was in the right place at the right time and able to buy a couple of them. I grew up in North Dakota, and duck hunting in North Dakota was crawling up on sloughs and jumping sloughs and trying to get a shot at a duck as it flew away from you. I never hunted over wooden decoys, but I met a few people that had, And because, of course, they were replaced with more modern, lightweight, out of fiberboard or plastic or something like that. And a lot of old decoys got burned or rotted away and that. So it's just, it kind of is an art form that a few people have written about back starting in the 50s and 60s. There were books written called The Art of the Decoy by Adele Ernest. When I was out in Maine, I enjoyed reading books about finding tollers up in Maine, and they'd go to old boathouses on the shore of the sea, and they'd find old decoys in there that were hunted over. Enjoyed the stories of those. There are major shows and major cataloged auctions different times of the year that you can go to. Again, I met people by buying things. If you go to the shows, you see people once or twice a year, develop friendships. It's more about a network. Sometimes someone knows what you collect and they say, hey, I found this bird and are you interested in it? You get calls every once in a while like that. So it's basically people, well, together with the same passion. And sometimes their passion leans in a different area than yours, so you can help them or they can help you. As I said before, John Tax was from Osakis, Minnesota. He was a blacksmith. He repaired canvas for binders as part of his blacksmith business. He also carved decoys on the side, and he was a hunting fishing guide on Lake Osakis. He made decoys out of wood, such as these. He made decoys out of canvas. With his binder repair skills and his readily available canvas, he had his own design. He made birds that have a wood bottom with a cork body and a wooden head, such as these. The other top shelf has the only styrofoam goose that he ever made with a wooden head, though an angry looking wooden head. That's the only wooden wood duck he made. A rare coot and a hen mallard, all done by Tax. He made these to be hunted over, not to be collected, but they became very sought after and collectible. I like the stories of the carvers, the Kermit Slatton story, the George Randall story. I liked finding out about them, and I wrote some small articles of each of the carvers and I enjoyed doing that. So that was kind of the passion part of it, finding out what was done in our area. These were made in Willmar, Minnesota. By Kermit Slatton. They were only made in the late 40s for 2 or 3 years after the war. He bought the lightweight aircraft aluminum, had a garage on the north side of town, and then rented buildings in the fairgrounds. He made molds like this and would pour the lightweight aircraft aluminum war surplus into the molds, and then as they cooled they became a fish decoy. And actually the mold is for this sunfish. And you can see the mark here where he cut. This would be called a sprue, and he would cut this off and then saw into the metal and then put in his little fin. These were each marked, I don't think, K. Slatton, Willmar, Minnesota, patent pending. Okay. Another fish decoy carver in the Willmar area his name was Cy Halverson. He made fish decoys in downtown Willmar, I believe. Had a hamburger stand down there and kind of a bait shop and everything. Made fish decoys there in the 50s and probably early 60s. And these are a few examples of what he did. An early box that shows he charged $1.35 for them. And of course the fish is in there. And this is his later box with a little newer fish. No zip code on there, so you know this was pre-1962. So his son Bob is living in the area now, and Bob hadn't started collecting till he moved back here, but now he has a good collection of his dad's fish. We, have some decoys that were made in our area. Oscar Quam in the New London area had a hunting camp out on Monongalia, or it used to be called Mud Lake, and they had a hotel, and people rode the rails out and hunted there for a week or two at a time in the teens, 20s, 30s, even early 40s. And Oscar made his decoys out of cork with a bottom base of wood and a wooden head. He eventually moved into Lake Street in Minneapolis and produced more decoys there. Also got famous for making duck calls. And there's quite a bit of information known about him. He still has relatives in this area. That's the main decoy maker from the Willmar, New London, Spicer area. But I'm sure there were people that, whittled a bird here and there and carved them and hunted over them. It was funny because you'd hear of the intricate carvings and paintings in the East Coast, and as that moved west, by the time it got to Minnesota, the story is you could throw any old piece of wood on the water with a head on it, and the birds would decoy into that. You didn't need anything fancy. So many of the birds are very folky looking, very, very unique, and every carver has their own style, but basically they are making something that they could shoot ducks over. And every carver is different. Every carver, like I said, has their own style, their own story. And there are some great, great stories out there about the carvers who would trade their work for many, many different things. So